All right. Welcome back to the Black Psychologist podcast. Appreciate everybody tuning in and returning. Hear us see what we got to say. I am one half of your host, Dr. Kyle Osborne, your clinician, and I'm here with my co-host and who's helping me fly this plane, the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Dr. Jason Coleman. How are you, good brother?
Hey man, what's going on, bro? Glad to be here again, man. How you doing?
Hanging in, man. How was your week, man?
Can't complain, man. Just grinding, working, trying to rest a little bit. Full disclosure, I didn't really get much coping in this weekend. It was pretty much all work. So I didn't even take my own advice. But we on otherwise just I'm blessed. We on to the next topic for today,
There you go. There you go. Yeah, man. It's been I think last week was different or was tough for a lot of different reasons, man. Like you had like it was a short week because of the holiday, but then also like we had the snow. Like so I don't know where how bad it was like in your area, but like over here it was terrible, man. Like it was that thing's a pain in the ass,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, listen, I appreciated the day off, but with some of sometimes like it's not really a day off because you get to work, you just got double to do the next day. So how
Pretty
that
much.
goes, man.
Yeah.
A lot of
And
times I
had
just
to and they had to shovel out and everything just to get out the joint, man. Yeah, that thing was yeah, I didn't like that at all. You know. But so we'll get started off with things. So I know a lot of what we talked about last week was COVID, and that's probably going to be like a running theme because pretty much of the times that we live in, it's going to be some form or some fashion, or to a certain extent, COVID's going to be related. So as you know, you and I are big sports fans, right? I don't think there's ever a conversation that we have where sports doesn't find its way somewhere in there, right?
definitely
So wanted to get your take on the All-Star game.
Cowboys stand up.
Oh yeah, yeah, man. Yeah,
Cowboys
listen,
stand
y'all
up.
need to give Dak his money, man. Stop playing around. Like, listen.
Listen, man, you gonna have a lot more problems than you think because y'all just signed Carson Wentz, didn't you?
Yeah, you know what, man? I'm just happy we didn't give that much up to get him. You see
All
what I'm
right.
saying? Like we didn't get
Hey,
that much up to get him. And I tell you what, I'm cool with the fact that we got a quarterback because Philip Rivers he retired, and so at least I'm cool with we got somebody. But like we're gonna find out if the boy Wentz is good. Like
that
we
ain't
gonna
it, man. We'll
we
we'll
gonna
talk about it later, but that ain't it. All
we
right,
gonna,
so back to the All-Star game.
yeah, so as you know, the All-Star game is gonna be happening in about 2 to 3 weeks. And
Mhm.
it's been a lot of controversy, it's been a lot of opinions about them continuing to have the All-Star game in Atlanta, given the pandemic that we're currently facing. So as a health clinician, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, about the All-Star game or about Atlanta? Because those are two different things. First, let's
Um
start with Atlanta.
yeah, we can get into Atlanta first. Go ahead.
Atlanta's off the hook. Atlanta's off the hook right now, right? Atlanta's off the hook right now for a bunch of reasons. Reason number one is that people in Atlanta, I don't want to paint everybody with a broad brush, but there's video clubs in Atlanta are popping right now. They
Hmm.
lit right now. There's people out there are acting like none of this is going on. So I'm seeing
Yeah, now nah, Atlanta's off the hook, man. You know, man, they got a lot of things going on down there. You know,
I mean, I just think that that's the first part of it. Like Atlanta in general, like it just kind of seems like people are kind of going about, their daily, routine and kind of doing what they want to do. And I get it. Well, no, I don't get it. I understand why they're doing it because it's young people or fairly young people doing it. But again, it's an absence of kind of understanding of how, your behavior, kind of impacts other people. So you look on the news and you see those numbers going up and up and up. If you're one of those people that's out there, then you're kind of contributing. Now the All-Star game, I, that's a whole nother point, right? Because from what I've heard and read, a lot of the players, and it kind of started with LeBron a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't think it's necessary. I think it's they kind of, obviously they're doing it for money. And the whole thing about the All-Star game is supposed to be a fan experience, right? And if it's not going to be no fans there, then what's the point, So that's kind of how I would start with it. I think it's pointless.
Yeah, it's so guess what state, right, out of the whole US is number 6 as far as the highest total in COVID cases? Take a guess.
Okay, Georgia. We talking Georgia.
Absolutely, right. And of course,
mm-hmm.
being that Atlanta is a major, metropolitan city, the majority of the cases are coming from the Atlanta area, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's already a situation in itself. And then now, like you mentioned it, I'm gonna read you some quotes, right, that I saw a couple weeks ago. So LeBron, like you mentioned, said he has zero energy in like for about the All-Star game, and he doesn't even understand like why they're having it. Kawhi Leonard said, "We all know why we're playing it. It's money on the line. It's an opportunity to make more money, so they're just putting money over health right now." Darren Fox, he was like, to be brutally honest, I think it's stupid. If we have to wear a mask and do all this for a regular game, then what's the point of bringing the All-Star game back, right? Karl Anthony Towns, who lost his mom and 6 other family members due to COVID, then he tested positive and he was out for like a month, right?
Right. I remember. He lost a bunch of family members.
Exactly, yeah. So he's saying that, well, he doesn't even believe that there should be an All-Star game. And so he's like, but what the hell do I know? Obviously, I haven't dealt with COVID. Probably a guy that has some insight into it, and it's like that's really troubling and disturbing, right? When your players are that adamant about like, listen, we have no desire to play in this game due to everything that's happening, and you're still gonna press forward with it. Like even the mayor of Atlanta came out and was like, yo, don't come down here. Right. He was like, listen, this is not a good situation. So like,
yeah, she's always been kind of
right. So I just feel like
she's always been on the right side of it.
Yeah, like it's very dangerous. Like for you to do this, like you just had 4 players, I think for San Antonio, like they just like 4 players on that team just tested positive, right? So now their games are going to get like canceled or postponed up until the next week, and now you want to bring in potentially like 20 different players from different teams all in one area. You see what I mean? Like, to me, that's I don't know, it's really irresponsible, right. And it's like you're just adding to the mix of things. Like that could potentially get even worse because now you're gonna have players going back to like their select teams.
Now I don't remember. Did they have one last year?
They did. It was just before. Because remember, the protocols and the shutdowns didn't happen until March. So like
okay. So it was after. It was after.
Yeah. So like in February, like they just made it, but like it really seems like the players and the NBA are like on 2 separate aisles here, right? And it's like blatantly like, well, we're gonna forge ahead with this, and like you said, they said I think they're only letting like staff and make family members and like certain like VIPs attend the game. So it's like you said, it's dedicated or it's meant to be for like fan interaction, right? So
right.
If it's not the fans aren't going to be involved, then why are you forcing the players, to put themselves in that position?
Right. I don't see the point. And that's just us looking at it of whether it's practical to have the event or not have the event, right? Because of like what the purpose of it is. But that we're not even talking about the health implications of having all these people travel, having their families travel, all of the people that are gonna have to come to work that day in the arena, all of that mm-hmm. type of stuff, they're just kind of disregarding that because remember, it's the show, right? Because usually they will be at least making some of that money back on the gate and concessions and all of that, right. So this to me kind of screams as like sponsors, right? And like fulfilling, partnerships and agreements that was made years ago, so that you don't have to give the money back, right. And that's obviously that's a problem because the health implications of that could be enormous. You know what I mean? I mean, because listen, it's ludicrous to think you're gonna bring those people into the city for All-Star game and for All-Star game or All-Star weekend, whatever, and what, they're not gonna go out to eat, they're not gonna go shopping, they're not gonna, so in addition to all of the, risks that we have from just bringing all of those people together in that one space, and all of those respective players from different teams mixing up, talking, whatever, touching each other, whatever the case may be, and then going back to their respective organizations, you know, you have all of the residual impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those people are not going to just come to Atlanta and not go to a club, not go get something to eat, not do any of those things. So I just think it's really just a lack of insight, but again, the NBA, like most organizations, they got a singular focus, right? And they have, people who are stakeholders, and those people are advertisers for the most part, and the owners and all of that stuff, So I mean, I think it's simple. It's just being driven by that. And the health aspect is being thrown out the window. So, but it's not new, right? We saw this in Georgia earlier, when the whole kind of debate was going on about wear a mask, don't wear a mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw it in Florida the same way, right? So you got leaders, whether it be governors, obviously the mayor of Atlanta has been on the right side of it the whole time, but some of these people who are the leaders of these governments, have decided that, the almighty dollar is kind of more important, than public health. So that's just where we at.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate, and I agree with everything you mentioned. It's just unfortunate that it's just that blatant of, you know what I mean, of what they say. We're gonna put our players first. We're thinking about health, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, what this All-Star game is we're gonna condense it as much as possible, put all these activities in one day, and
Right.
like you said, they're gonna actually thinking that like these players again aren't going to go out to eat, aren't going to do all these other intangibles or ancillary things, and it's going to be just as contained. I think I saw in one of the articles I came across, they were calling it a mini bubble. I'm just like, that's not realistic. All right.
Yeah, it's not realistic.
And it's unfortunate. Like, you really feel for the players because I get it. Like, okay, like this is their job, this is their profession. However, right, we have to look at it in the sense of like putting them in unnecessary danger, right? It's just disconcerting, right? It's just disheartening in that
Right.
sense of thinking about their welfare and their families, right? Because they have to go back to their respective families, they have to go back to their loved ones. And I get that they chose this profession, but they didn't choose to be, especially for an exhibition game, right? Like you said, there are partnerships, but this is an exhibition game strictly
Right.
for the partnerships, the sponsors. And I saw something that like some of the proceeds, I think like 2.5 million is going to be going towards HBCUs to support awareness and around
Mhm.
equality and COVID and equality care relief. And that's all well and good. But if they're going to be able to give 2.5 million to HBCUs, what are they making?
Right. I mean, come on. Let's be serious. We already know if
Right.
they cutting 2.5 million of the pie and giving it to our alma maters, then they probably making 100 million off the day.
Exactly.
And we're not talking about jerseys and all this other stuff that they selling. But again, it comes down to public health, or the economy sometimes, right? And I mean, again, we're not going to get too political, but we've seen where most people's, when you say put your money where your mouth is, we see where most people's value kind of lie when it comes to that. It's usually about the economy. So, and in all honesty, it's surprising to me because of how well they handled it last season, right? In terms of the bubble and all of that, the NBA was almost like a model, in terms of like trying to like model new, kind of like the best behaviors and just being able to adjust on the fly, but that makes this even more surprising, So, I mean, again, I'm disappointed, but, a lot of these bigger needs, they're, certain obligations, they just, work. I think we need this here, we'll see how it works out. I don't think it's a good idea, but we'll see how it works out,
Yeah, I definitely hope that everybody's able to stay safe and stay as healthy as possible. To the people that are participating, from whether it be like you said, the staff or and the players. So hopefully, it doesn't get too out of hand. So we can just kind of hope and pray for the best.
Yeah.
So keeping it on the culture front, all right. We came across some articles that were involving mental health and hip hop and rap. Right. So mental
Right.
health is starting to take center stage in some of the top rap songs and things that are coming out. And the research, there was a study that was done over a period of time. And it looks like it says researchers found that in 1998, 32% of popular rap songs discuss mental health.
Good.
And in 2018, that number doubled. So want to get your take on that. Like, what are your thoughts and opinions on mental health getting mixed in more with hip hop and that culture?
Well, I mean, honestly, this is a topic like I kind of wanted to do something with for a very long time.
Mhm.
Like I still might like think about like writing a little bit on this
Yeah.
because I think it's very interesting, right? First of all, I think the light is just kind of being shined on hip hop in terms of like talking about mental health, but I think
Mhm.
it's always been there, right? Like I consider myself a student of hip hop. I'm a fan first, and it's always been there, Now I think things are just becoming more prevalent. So I think in that article you sent me, they were saying like, what were they saying in 1998? Was it 30 something
32%.
percent?
Yeah.
Right. And they were saying that 10 years later it doubled, right?
Right. Yep.
Right. So I I think it's kind of interesting when we look at how that coincides with, we've seen a lot of, and of course I'm not talking about like hard figures here, but we've seen over the years, we've seen an increase in, hip hop artists dying, by suicide, um, a lot of mental health problems in terms of just being taken to the forefront in terms of talking about things, right? The kid X that I think about comes to mind. Little Peep comes to mind. Little Wayne comes to mind. People that have talked openly, kind of about mental health challenges, right? And if we look at the current artists, I think we got to give them a lot of credit. And I
Mhm.
mean, like your G Herbos, your Rod Waves. There's a lot of these guys out here where they're in their 20s or early 30s, and they had the courage to kind of talk about not only mental health diagnoses they've had, but engaging in therapy,
Mhm.
medication struggles they've had. Um, and I think first of all, we got to take our hats off to this younger generation, right? Because they're chipping away at the stigma. Number one. Um, the second thing, I think that it putting these things out in the open, I think makes it more likely that individuals will talk about things they're struggling with, and hopefully, seek help, but that's just where I would start, so I think it's a good thing. And with all of the kind of, for lack of it's for some of the content, when we're talking about this, in terms of bringing mental health to the forefront, I think we got to give rappers, especially the young rappers, credit. What do you think?
No, all day with that, man. I think it's dope. I think every part of this is great because you know the impact of rap is so powerful, man, in our communities, right? Or in any lower SES community, right? It's you know, in that community where we're from, like about 90% of people that live there, 90% of the residents are battling trauma, right? Or battling
Right.
some form of some mental health issue. I mean, I think it's something I read an article maybe a year or two ago that you like in our community, we have about like it's about 40% of people have been diagnosed and are living and battling PTSD.
Right.
So like I love every part of this because like you said, it's been happening, but it's happening more frequently, right? So
Right.
like years and years ago, you had a few select songs that were taking place. So you had like the Ghetto Boys, right? Where My Mind Is
Mhm.
Playing Tricks on Me, where they were
Mhm.
talking about someone suffering from post-traumatic stress or like the
Mhm.
paranoia thinking and schizophrenia. And you had, I remember on Big's first album, the Suicidal Thoughts.
Suicidal Thoughts.
Yeah, the Suicidal Thoughts, and you know how he's writing it from you know the perspective of like a suicide note. Then he calls Puff like, "Listen, this is what I'm getting ready to do." And of course, you had Tupac with the So Many Tears
But
and all them other
just let me
songs.
jump in. Just let me jump in for a second. Think
Yeah,
about
yeah,
when that came out. I remember I was in 8th grade. That's 94, right?
right.
The shock of that song, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, you know, that's part of Biggie's whole appeal is taking the norms and just turning them on the outside, you know, upside down,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the audacity of somebody to speak about that, right, in a way, no time during that, and think about it, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people associate, you know, having suicidal thoughts wrongly. They associate it with weakness, right? Nobody would ever associate Biggie Smalls with weakness, right? So that, to me, when I look back at that song and I look back at how powerful it wasn't just powerful just because he had the awe to talk about those things in public, but it's like Barack Obama or talking to you about mental health, right? It's like seeing LeBron James on the Calm commercial, right? It's like Michael Phelps telling you he got depression. These are monsters, right? So if Robin Williams is dealing with depression, you know, then little old me, you know what I mean? Why should I be ashamed, right? So I didn't even, of course I didn't look at it as that in the moment, but I just wanted to point that out. But go ahead, my bad.
No, that and absolutely, because that's the impact, you know, that I'm talking about. Like once you kind of understand what's taking place, like you had that song, we had Tupac, of course, with his songs like with So Many Tears, where he's talking about, you know, the suicidal thoughts and all the stressors. I remember I'm a big Tribe Called Quest fan, so I remember they had a song called Stressed Out where they were talking about just everyday stressors and anxiety and then taking medication.
Right.
And like you just said something that really I wanted to highlight is that like yo in our community, right? We're told not to talk about that, right? We're told to hold back tears. We're told to, you know, you got to stay strong no matter what you're experiencing. It's like, yo, stay strong. Don't get it out. Like, don't put our business out there, right? Don't put family business out there if you are
Right.
struggling with something. You know, we got to hold all that in. And for like when you hear, like you said, some of the newer artists now that are willing to talk about like what they're going through, right? And it doesn't always have to be to the extent where it's like maybe a full blown mental health issue or disorder. It could be just like just talking about just emotional stuff what's going on or situational, right? Like
Right.
it's really good when you have like these artists to help normalize regular, you know, emotional issues. It might be like talking about like I remember what's his name, Joe Button, right? He came out with a song like called Only Human, and it was about like after he recently got out of jail, right? So he was
Right.
talking about like where his mental state was as far as that goes. He was talking about the depression. Kendrick had a joint on his album, the song You, where he talks about like survivor's guilt, right? He talks about you know, his depressive thoughts of like, yo, I made it out, right, with my talent, but there's still people that I care about that are still back there, and he's not able to save people, you
That's a
know.
good point. I think Joe Budden is a good example, right? Because he's one of these people who has talked openly about his struggles with mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bravely talked openly about it, and what he's done in terms of the hard work he's done, you know. And the thing is, you know, and I mean, we can kind of get to that in a minute, but the added stress to that is you got a lot of these people, you got to give them their credit because a lot of them are still going through these, you know, mental health isn't something that ends, right? So they're going through these struggles in the public eye, right? And just in terms of talking about the music for a minute, I think the proof is in the sales, right? Because if you look at a lot of these quote unquote emo rappers, they're blowing up, right? They got 20, 30 million streams on YouTube, 100 million streams, right? And then if we look at adolescents and teenagers, those numbers are spiking in terms of them being diagnosed with mental health disorders or just identifying themselves as having stressors, whether it be school, family, or whatever.
Right.
So they're consuming that music for a reason. It's resonating with them for a reason, right? Because some of those people are speaking for them, you know? So I just think teachers, right? Parents, us as practitioners, like we gotta pay attention. Like, I started bringing rap music into my therapy sessions almost 10 years ago, right? Was I telling my supervisors that I was doing it? No, but I was doing it. Why? Because when I would ask some of my teenagers, you know, if they felt sad, you know, they couldn't verbalize it. You know, and we talking about Black and brown males, they've been socialized in a society that tells them that the only, you know, emotions they could be comfortable expression is aggression, right? And happiness if they're around their mother, right? So how can you pull those feelings out? Now, if I ask them, yo, what you listen to when you upset, what you listen to make you feel better, right? What you listen to when you happy, then I start getting, oh, I listen to Eminem, you know, oh, I listen to P&B Rock, you know, oh, I listen to Rod Wave, or I listen to this person and that person. And then we start talking about, well, why does this song resonate with you? Oh, my mother died, my homie died, this person. This is why they listening to this music, right? So I only point that out to say, you know, it's indicative of a bigger kind of public health issue in terms of where, you know, our, you know, young people are at. And I mean, I don't even have to, we can look at, I don't have the numbers, but again, we've lost how many young rappers due to suicide or drug overdoses, right? And we know, you know, if a person is dying off a drug overdose, you know, we're not just talking disparagingly about them, but, you know, we know that those are escape mechanisms, right? So the mental health is here, you know, but if we think about it, hip hop is the perfect outlet, right? Because it's always been the voice for the unheard, and people who are unheard, you know, who are in the hood, who are in just bad situations, or who are just working and grinding every day, just working people, whether they're in the suburbs or not, you know, those people, they got in their stories is trauma, you know, like you was talking about, you know. So what we're seeing is that trauma play out through their lives, you know.
Yeah, man. I wonder, you mentioned something really important. It's like you said, it's therapeutic for them, right? I mean, because that's the easiest coping skill, like especially like you said, when you're dealing with teenagers, is their first thing is gonna go to music. And like you mentioned, they're gonna go with a song or an artist that they identify with. So like you said, I remember you know, a lot of kids that I was working with at some point in time, like Juice World, right? And the song Lucid Dreams was talked about him going through the issues.
Talented
Yeah,
kid. He was a talented kid.
right. And then I mean, going through a breakup, and Lil Uzi Vert, like you mentioned, is one of is like the leading emo rapper who he talks openly about issues, you know, things, you know, the darkness that he experiences. And like you said, like that's a window. Like I feel like as a clinician and as a parent, and just like us, you know, anyone that wants to help people, especially when you're looking at any marginalized population, but especially like kids, the youth, where you say you don't understand them, like, yo, the window is through the music. Like if you're able to get in tune with who a person or who a kid is listening to, like you said, he or she is gonna listen to this song because it resonates with them, right? It takes them down that path for what they're experiencing. It's just like you're able to get so much from this. And the fact that, like you said, these younger artists are so upfront about it, right? They're willing to tell you, not even just put it in a bar or in a metaphor. No, they're going to tell you the medication that they're taking, right? They're going to tell you what exactly took place to them, the way that they're dealing with their trauma, because it's therapeutic for them when they're writing the song, when they're writing the lyric. And then that's, like you said, it speaks to everyone that's going through that same thing. So it sets the stage. Go ahead.
Now, I'll give you a prime example. I had a teenager in my office probably like 6 months ago. We were doing an evaluation about some very sensitive like trauma and different things. She had depression, right? Very significant, right? She again, she didn't really feel comfortable talking about the depression. Not saying she has the depression, so she knows what it feels like, but in terms of finding the words to explain it to me, you know, person she's meeting for the first time, it's a little difficult. So you know how it goes, we got 101 ways to skin a cat, right? So I'm just talking to her, I don't force anybody to talk about her regular interest. And she starts talking to me about music. And the first person she mentions is Rod Wave. Now, I'm a student of hip hop and I listen to these young artists. I know a lot of Rob music is focused around depression and being lost and, finding himself and all of those things. Those are the themes around. I'm not saying every song is like that, but those are the themes around his music.
Right.
So as soon as she said that to me, I said, okay, I got something.